WCLN 1170 Radio and Star Communications Channel 16 proudly present the We Should Know Show, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative. Now, here's your host, J.W. Simmons, as we consider closely what we should know.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. J.W. Simmons here. The name of the show is We Should Know. We're talking with someone that most likely you have heard about. You may know on a very personal level, and that's Dr. Tommy Newton. Dr. Newton, thank you for taking time. We've been working on getting you in the studio for quite a while now, ever since you retired, to just kind of talk a bit about your career and your 37 plus years here in Clinton. Moving here, growing up in Ahoskie, moving here from Virginia. I want to start at the very grassroots. How and what was the calling in Clinton, North Carolina, this area of the state, for you and your family?
Well, you mentioned already, I grew up in Ahoskie.
Yep.
Town very similar to Clinton. And so there's some comfort level. Did my training at UNC and also in Roanoke, Virginia. And then in looking for a place to come set up shop and start practicing, I looked all over Eastern North Carolina. And I had a connection with Dr. Nance's family through my brother in Wake Forest. And so Dr. Nance invited me down here to come talk to him about working with him. And when I did that, I just felt at home. And so this was as a group of physicians that I really thought I bonded with, and it turns out, it was a great thing. Turned out to be 37 and a half years worth of practicing here in this community. So it's just, like I said, Ahoskie and Clinton, just a lot of similarities. Differences, of course, but a lot of similarities. So I was very comfortable. I grew up on a farm. I told a lot of my patients I probably put in more back than you have. And most of them, couldn't believe that, but in truth and fact, I did. So I knew a lot of the issues, struggles, and values that people in Sampson County had. So I could identify with them. They could identify with me. So it was a good thing.
I hear oftentimes when folks speak about you, they use the word relatability. Is that what you just said just kind of brings that to the forefront? They could relate. You could relate to them. You understood that stress, that strain, sometimes that anxiety.
Well, much like you, the vast majority of my patients, I consider them friends. I just happen to fulfill that role of their physician as an aside. So number one, they were friends. And when you are friends with somebody, you know them.
That's right.
And you relate to them. And for whatever reason, the way my parents raised me, and I was able to relate to people here in a good way. And I also got involved in the community, as you know, early on. I was a team physician for the Dark Horses for 35 years. So that was part of my way of giving back to this community. And, many times in first, this place is football crazy. So I had people that would come to me the first couple of years I was in practice and said, if you're good enough for the Dark Horses, you're good enough for me.
That's right. That's exactly right. And it means a lot, but those are the simple things. Is there even a way that kind of thought can even be taught in medical school?
I'm not sure it's taught that way in the ivory tower, but in family medicine, when you have preceptors like myself, if you have students that come in and all, they see what we do, and we talk to them about how important it is to be involved in the community and to be a productive member of the community and to give back, in addition to just being a doctor.
I want you to just for a moment to flash back with me and let's walk here for a minute, because I recall just from the outside looking in, when medicine, if you went to the hospital in Clinton, North Carolina, that your family physician came to see you and checked on you. Over the years, that changed, and there was somebody that was called a hospitalist that you never heard of, didn't know his name, didn't know where he come from or nothing. So talk about, for us, if you will, those changes that you saw, that maybe you were involved in as your journey began here in medicine some 37 plus years ago. Just kind of give us an idea of some of the things you saw that maybe from the outside we couldn't see that were happening in medicine.
Sure. So as you aptly described, when I first came to Clinton, we took care of basically everything. We call it womb to tomb. Mm-hmm. So we delivered babies. We took care of babies. We took care of young adults. We took care of adolescents, adults, on to senior citizens, in the nursing homes, a little bit of everything. And so when I took call, or even when I wasn't on call, when my patients were in the hospital, I took care of them. And as long as, they didn't need specialty care. So, my day would consist of first thing going to the hospital, seeing my patients in the hospital, then going to the office, then a lot of times going back and forth to the hospital 2 or 3 times a day, in between seeing patients in the office, and then, before I ever got home. And so, and that evolved for a number of different reasons. We can talk 3 or 4 segments about that, but over the years that evolved to exactly what you said, and that most hospitals, including Sampson Regional, employed hospitalists. And, so we were no longer involved in the direct hospital care of some of our patients. Initially went with adults and then with children, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of how it's evolved. And now we're primarily, when I retired, we were primarily outpatient doctors. So, if I went to the hospital to see a patient, it was basically to visit as a friend, which I did on a number of occasions. But that was not part of my responsibilities every day, clinical responsibilities.
A couple of people I remember, I'm just going to toss these names out and let you kind of maybe expand on it or see what your interaction with. But I remember, and again, I'm in that age range, so as you know, so I'm going to toss out a couple. I remember Dr. Nance and a little bit about his family. I remember a doctor by the name of Dr. Henry Carr. And for some reason, there were others, but for some reason, for me, and folks listening probably have their own folks they can remember, but they were the significant, I'll call it the movers and shakers in the field of medicine during their day. What was your experience knowing those two people on the level you knew them on, which was on the medical level or referral level?
Sure. Well, of course, I practiced right beside Dr. Nance for a number of years before he ended up retiring. And, I would see Dr. Carr in the hospital, and I worked for a number of years with his son, Bill, who just retired. But there were some other people you didn't talk about that I'd put in that category too. Dr. Peak, Dr. Leak, as well, Dr. Herring. I worked with some outstanding men and good mentors. So you saw how they handled difficult situations in particular, or different situations, but difficult, including difficult ones. And if you kept your eyes open, you could learn something in how they handled problems, not only just medical problems, but other problems, that go along with family dynamics, things like that. And, just wonderful teachers.
I think one of the things that I remember during that era, it was like Dr. Nance was kind of like as I recall, and this is my words, but he was kind of like the go-to guy. A lot of folks in that era, because he was somewhat senior, they would go and say, okay, not only what do you need to do, but in this situation, where do we go? Or where do we go here as a group of physicians? Where should we be focused? I don't know what the response to what I just said was, but he seemed to be that person that you would go to.
Oh, yeah. Think of his background. Dr. Nance was a fighter pilot in World War II. So he had a lot of moxie. And so he'd been through a lot and survived, which says a lot anyway. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, it was, people like that had, there's the old saying, I've been there, done that. Mm-hmm. And so they just had a way about themselves that would, help you. I mean, when you're young and you hadn't been in a certain situation, you can be quite scared. Mm-hmm. You could panic, although, you've been trained well, but you still, when you're out there and you don't have that attending, your superiors at a training place, it can be kind of difficult. I'll give you a story.
Let's take a break and hold that story right there, because we're going to come back. I want you to do that. Then I want to kind of get into some more of this, what I call the best parts of life story of Tommy Newton. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. We're talking with Dr. Tommy Newton, now retired Dr. Tommy Newton, a little bit about his journey, things he's doing now, and expectations for the future. We'll be back in a moment.
Just because something may work doesn't mean it's right for your business. Let Star Communications' knowledgeable consultants help you customize a hosted voice system that's right for you. Our dedicated experts work with you to understand your business needs and guide you at every step, from choosing and installing services to ongoing maintenance and support. Contact Star today.
Eastern North Carolina is a beautiful place where we gladly choose to call home, and we strive to provide the best communications services. Star is committed to improving communications to all our service areas, because we want to improve the communities where we not only work, but also live. Star Communications. We are neighbors serving neighbors.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know's on there. J.W. Simmons here, your host. We're talking with Dr. Tommy Newton, retired Dr. Tommy Newton. Tommy, we've been going through your history from Ahoskie to Virginia, back to Clinton, and we were involved in here now talking in that process in your mind that you remember a lot about the doctors that you were associated with, the mentors. We just circled up to talk about a little more in depth about one of your mentors, Dr. Nance. And you were elaborating on that. And as we went to break, you had on the tip of your tongue a story you wanted to share.
I've delivered a bunch of babies here and in residency too. But my first delivery in Clinton, North Carolina, was a complicated delivery.
Whoa.
One that actually I had seen in residency, but if a patient presented with the position of the baby like this, you should have a C-section. Well, this patient refused to have a C-section. So the OBGYN said, good luck. And I was there basically by myself. And the first thing I did was call Dr. Nance. Dr. Nance had a sort of a subspecialty of deliveries. And bless his heart, he dropped what he was doing in the office and came over to the hospital and helped me successfully deliver that baby. And, that just tells you a lot about him and about his nurturing of young physicians and just how he wanted things to people to get the right care. And that's the way he always was. And I'll tell you something else about him. I worked at Clinton Medical Clinic. We had a bunch of wonderful physicians. We met as a group, the physicians, once a week for lunch to talk about clinical things, administrative things, and what we needed to do for patients and this, that, and the other. And many times we're always been an innovative practice. And many times we would be discussing about whether to go forth and do a new procedure, a new test, offer that, this, that, and the other. Dr. Nance said more than one time. He listened to discussion and he said, gentlemen, if we'll do what's right for our patients, we'll be fine.
Wow.
Never forgot that.
That's an excellent motto in the sense of not only for what you're doing, but for us that are patients out here in the world. I'm hoping we have some of that still going forward.
I think so. And I hope that legacy will continue.
When you think about challenges that you faced during your journey as a practicing physician, one of the things I hear a lot from physicians today is the whole new world of finance, insurance, all that kind of thing, kind of bottling up the system. And in fact, I was talking with a doctor some years back in Raleigh. I won't get in too close on that, but he mentioned that he had to check with somebody that was basically skilled in answering the phone to clear a procedure that he knew needed to be done. And he was telling me that simply because it troubled him. And I'm wondering, is that something you faced and you think that's cleared up some, or has it gotten worse? I mean, a lot of people don't see that with doctors.
No, that what you hit on is one of the reasons that I am semi-retired now.
Wow.
So let's get back a little. Let's go back a little to another aspect, though.
Okay.
So one of the issues that you deal with coming out and starting your medical career is balancing your relationship with your family, with your career, and being a healthy balance there. And that's not an easy thing to do because the demands. You think about the demands of, in my instance, being a father, a husband, a community person, in addition to being a physician and taking care of patients, give them the best care they can. It can be a daunting task. So learning that balance is difficult. Now, so that's the personal part. The medical part that you're talking about. When I first started practicing here in '84, it didn't. If I thought you needed a CT scan, or if I thought you needed a certain test, or if I thought you needed a wheelchair, or I thought you needed a cane, or whatever, all I had to do, or a certain medicine, all I had to do was write a prescription for it, and it got done. Your insurance, if you had it, took care of it. Nobody asking you questions.
Not questions about the insurance company or anybody else.
As medicine has evolved, it's almost gotten to, as the doctor you talk to, we have a mother may I for everything. And that can be difficult. I was fortunate enough to practice before that happened, but that's escalated, and that's not gone away. Folks are learning how to deal with that some, but that aspect has really not gone away, and I'm not really. I don't like that part of medicine. And that had a lot to do. I loved my patients. I still do. Consider the people I took care of for 37 plus years as my friends first. And I consider them still my friends, as we've seen each other in the grocery store and places like that. And I still wonderful conversations with them and all. But when it got to the point, if I thought you needed to have test X, Y, or Z or whatever, that I had to justify all of that to your insurance company before they pay for it. Prior to, I had to spend an extra amount of administrative time or of my time or my nurse's time or whatever to get that quote approved. That takes a little getting used to, and I never really got used to that. You learn ways around it or ways to deal with it, but I never got used to that. And the other thing that really was sort of straw that broke the camel's back for me, the treatment of certain diseases like diabetes. We have a lot of diabetic patients around here. And there are some newer medicines, you've seen them advertised on TV, that are really good. And they will help you treat somebody in the best way that you can. But there are no generics for those medications. And the vast majority of our patients, particularly on government assistance in particular, or elderly, those were ones that needed it most. They couldn't afford it. Many times I prescribed those medications and the patient came out and said, "Doc, I can't afford that."
And these are life-saving medications in some places.
So I would be basically in one respect or another forced to treat somebody with an older medicine that's cheaper, and it was almost like practicing with one arm tied behind your back. And on the other hand, we'll talk about again with the way value-based care is set up now, I'm held responsible for the control of that patient's diabetes, but yet I wasn't allowed to give them what I really thought they needed. So that was a conundrum for sure.
At the very least, because that had to be a personal burden too. Because as a caring physician, you had to make a choice. Well, how do I do that and still feel comfortable with my care for that patient?
Absolutely, you're right. That's a very difficult thing to deal with.
So when you left the daily practice of medicine, you left it in that kind of world where doctors and folks that are prescribing medications have to go through that, should we say, gauntlet.
Approval. It's called prior approval.
Yeah. That gauntlet of folks that, as again, one doctor told me, it was like talking to somebody that was paid to answer a phone and justifying, and it was a checkoff list they were justifying.
Mm-hmm. Yep, they have algorithms to go through.
But that gets back to the financial end, and the insurance company assuring the financial capacity of that company, which is being wrestled with right now as we sit here and talk today.
Yep, it is. No question about it.
But what we're talking about also is you knew the world before that.
Yes, I did.
And a lot of people, to conversations we've had outside of camera time here, a lot of folks will never know that because they weren't there. That other world did exist.
That's right. Yeah. For those older people in the audience that remember the story of Marcus Welby, MD.
Yes.
When I first started practicing, it was a lot like that, but it's not like that anymore.
It's amazing when I listen to somebody that that lived through it, that interacted with people during that period. And I think it's even more critical as we talk today. And hopefully, you mentioned folks about our age, give or take, maybe they'll say to their siblings or somebody, you might need to sit down and listen to a physician that was there in the 80s, and now you'll have something to compare it to. Because the big thing I'm hearing is a lot of folks don't understand maybe what we're talking about because they were not there at the time. They didn't see it. They don't understand maybe how we got here. So when we come back from this break, I want to kind of continue this conversation with your journey that will help us kind of, should I say, have a much clearer windshield. Because I think if you can compare going forward, your windshield is clear because you can see something and you go, well, there's something not right about that. Or there is another way to do that. So, ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We're talking with Dr. Tommy Newton. We're talking a bit about history. We're talking about medicine in the sense of its application. We'll be back in a moment. Call a friend.
For the ultimate Wi-Fi experience, you need Whole Home Wi-Fi from Star Communications. Star's Whole Home Wi-Fi provides ultimate coverage, ultimate performance, and ultimate power all the time. Star's Whole Home Wi-Fi systems feature the latest Wi-Fi 6 technology and are equipped with unrivaled bandwidth and 4 times more simultaneous connections. So you can connect tons of devices throughout your home with no lag and no downtime. Plus, with 24/7 support and remote troubleshooting, you can rest assured that Star is always there to help you should any issues arise. Star's Whole Home Wi-Fi also comes with the Command IQ mobile app, putting you in control of your home network and making it easy to set up and connect devices, run network speed tests, pause Wi-Fi, and set parental controls all from the palm of your hand. It's the ultimate Wi-Fi experience. Contact Star today to get started.
Let's get out of here.
Protect what matters most in your life with security from Star Communications.
105.7. 105.7. Tuning into Christian 105.7 is tuning in to a space of hope, encouragement, answers, and love. With the magic of radio or the convenience of the internet, Christian 105.7 is focused on sharing the universal truth and light of Christ with a local touch that creates that special feeling of community. More than just another broadcast station, we're your neighbors. Christian 105.7. What faith sounds like.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. J.W. Simmons here. Your name of the show is We Should Know. I'm your host. We're talking with Dr. Tommy Newton today. I want to remind you as we talk to Dr. Newton, many of you are going to remember him. I am sure his patient base was huge here in the area since 1984. A lot of you will probably say, as you do many times as I see you in the community or you email me, I'd like for you to email We Should Know edu@gmail.com. Remember that it's We Should Know edu@gmail.com. If you have a question, a comment about something I maybe should have asked but didn't, or maybe you wish that I could have explored a bit more, or you would like to maybe get an answer to a question that, you know, maybe you didn't want put on air, if you'll send that to me, I'll make sure Dr. Newton gets it and let him determine if he can help you with that answer to that question. So we just want to make sure we're inclusive with everybody watching the show, and it's something that you're finding beneficial. And I'm always refreshed to hear from each and every one of you. So now back to the show. Dr. Newton, again, thank you for being with us. It's one of these things that by having you on is a perfect example why I enjoy doing this. I feel like it's something of added value to people listening. But we've talked a lot about your journey and a bit about not only how you got here, but some of your experiences in office. But I want to talk about now something that you're involved in, and it's called Community Care Physicians Network. The more I read about that, the more I discovered that's not only a huge operation in the state of North Carolina, but it's something that is I'll call it a vital asset to communities, particularly rural communities. Tell us what you're doing with that and what you've been involved in this, by the way, for some time.
Yes, I have. So Community Care of North Carolina has been in existence for probably 25 years. Mm-hmm. And our group has been a part of that, whatever it was called something different earlier. But in the early part, that was primarily care management of Medicaid population and complex needs and helping them in the community to help alleviate things that would be a hindrance to their medical care. So it was really a part of being a team. One of the first things of being like team-based care. So that's a little background on community care. Let me get back to, let me tell you a little bit about why I'm doing what I'm doing now.
Okay.
And it goes back somewhat to, we talked earlier, spent a lot of time talking about my mentors. Mm-hmm. Another mentor of mine is Dr. Frank Leak, mm-hmm. marvelous person, just passed away not too long ago. But in his latter part of his career, when he stopped seeing patients, he went to work for the Kate B. Reynolds Foundation and helped recruit doctors to areas in North Carolina where they were needed. And in fact, I could name you about at least 4 doctors in this community that are in Clinton and have remained in Clinton because of the efforts of Dr. Lee. So that always intrigued me, and I thought it was a great role model. That type thing, and he worked with Office of Rural Health as well, mm-hmm. but that type thing was not available to me in the latter part of my career. But I wanted to do something to help the healthcare system in the state of North Carolina, in particular rural areas, mm-hmm. More so than the one-on-one with patients mm-hmm. at the end of my career. So the opportunity for me to become a regional medical director for Community Care Physicians Network came about. And so really what I do now is put it really plainly, I'm a teacher and I'm a coach for my colleagues across the state. The Community Care Physicians Network is a little over probably 3,000 to 3,500 providers in this state, in all 100 counties that are independent primary care practices. It might be there are some health departments, there's some federally qualified health centers, and then there's some independent primary care practices like mine. Mm-hmm. And so the world now of medicine, we've talked about the way it used to be, but the world now is called value-based care. Mm-hmm. Outcomes, how you treat, how you manage blood pressure, how you manage diabetes, how many patients of your patients you get in for their annual wellness visits, things like that. And we had been doing that at Clinton Medical Clinic for a number of years and had sort of learned the hard way how to do it right. So I had some experience with that. And so what I'm doing now is I am helping colleagues across the state learn how to be better doctors by teaching them the things that we learned, and giving them helping them with processes and workflows to make the practice of medicine, more effective, help them do a better job of taking care of the patients. And it is, and also to help their practices, because these independent primary care practices like ours, they're small businesses. Mm-hmm. If they aren't able to, make ends meet, then, that's a big loss to a community like Clinton, let's say. And there are a lot of communities like Clinton across the state that are like this. Most of the practices that are in this community care physicians network are 1 or 2 provider practices, not a big practice like Clinton Medical Clinic. So, and they're vital to the economy and to the health and well-being of these communities around North Carolina. So I feel like by teaching my colleagues how to do a better job and how to get more meaning, let's say, not get bogged down so much in the practice of medicine now, then I've done some good for both people of this state and my colleagues.
Mm-hmm. The part of that I think is interesting. The way you laid that out brings back something that I read with the North Carolina Rural Center, and they talk about the policies and recommendations regarding stabilization and transformation of rural health. And there, of course, there's a number of bullet points there. And one of them is what you alluded to a while ago, which is close the healthcare insurance coverage gap in North Carolina to ensure healthier, more economically viable communities. And what struck me with that bullet was that it basically spoke to me from what I look at here. In the sense, it's a rural community. A lot of times it does not fit the profile of downtown Raleigh and skyscrapers. And at the same time, you have those people that you've seen in your entire career that you just talked about that didn't have the financial wherewithal to be able to have that one medication. But what I read from that, Tom, and tell me if I'm reading wrong here, is that the physicians that you're talking to, you're basically teaching them agility to be able to maneuver, to be able to look for and find innovative ways. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, in a sense, that's right. Yeah, I mean, if you don't do it right, you trying to learn how to be an effective physician in value-based care. Mm-hmm. Just like I mentioned earlier about just coming out and practice to start off with, it can be a daunting task. So if you have somebody who has, like I said earlier, been there, done that, and can give you some suggestions on how to do a better job, that would make the quality of your health care delivery to your patients better. Mm-hmm. I think I've accomplished something in that respect. And you mentioned about the rural health. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we hadn't even talked about, but one of the best things that's happened in a number of years is the recent Medicaid expansion.
Absolutely.
There are so many people in this area and all across the state who are in that, as you mentioned, gap. Mm-hmm. Good, hard-working people that work for small businesses that can't afford to offer health insurance benefits for them. And they are in that gap of the income gap that they have a hard time affording it on their own. This is gonna help a number of them. We're talking skilled people like plumbers and electricians and things like that. Good, hard-working people.
Absolutely. Vital.
Absolutely vital to a community. So the Medicaid expansion is going to, it's not going to cure all of it, but that opens up to a lot of people. Healthcare people would, if you couldn't afford to get a physical, you couldn't afford to get a colonoscopy, you couldn't afford to get X, Y, or Z, or you couldn't afford to pay the doctor because you didn't have any insurance. Mm-hmm. You might neglect a little problem and it end up being a big problem. And the next thing you know, you've got a really complicated mess. You're in the hospital and you got to have a lot more done that's a lot more expensive. Analogy. You can get your oil changed every 3, 5, 7,000 miles, whatever it is now. Or you can skip a time or two and you may get by fine. But then it may be that your engine cocks out 100 miles from home.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk more about some of those, what has been seen as unsolvable problems. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We're coming up on the last part of the show. We're talking with Dr. Tommy Newton. I hope you're finding it as interesting as I am. Stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment.
Providing fewer commutes, more backyard offices, and crystal clear meetings. Providing less, you froze up, and more presence in your presentations. Providing a better internet experience. Providing possible.
You're out for an evening on the town. Finally a chance to relax and forget that you left your front door completely unlocked. Fortunately, you just installed a security system from Star Communications. With just your cell phone, you can check on your house, lock it down, light it up, and get back to relaxing.
You forgot to put Buster in his crate.
Unfortunately, we can't help with that. Security and automation from Star Communications. Call today to find out more.
Most aging adults want to stay in their homes as long as possible. And as your loved ones get older, you want to support them, even when you can't be there. Star is proud to offer Star Alert. This new system is now mobile and has GPS compatibility, so your loved ones can live their lives and you can have peace of mind, knowing they can get the help they need with just the simple push of a button. The new Star Alert also offers automatic fall detection, so help will be alerted even if they can't press the button. Call and ask about Star Alert today.
Welcome back, folks. J.W. Simmons here. The name of the show is We Should Know. We're talking with Dr. Tommy Newton today about medical care, not only in the past, not only in the present, but possibly in the future. Dr. Newton, that's one of the parts I wanted to talk a bit about on this last part of the show. And of course, anywhere we need to go with this, kind of just feel like to fill in here. But when we look at medicine going forward, you've been there. I think your phrase a while ago, been there, done that kind of thing. Now we're looking at this dynamic need for medical doctors in rural communities. The response I often get is that spouses are less apt to want to come to a rural area than maybe the doctor is that's just graduated. Help us understand that from a perspective of somebody that's been there, done that. Also from the perspective of somebody that's still out there recruiting and bringing and helping bring doctors to this rural environment that both you and I love.
Okay, sure. So you're exactly right. And part of the issue with getting physicians or really any allied health provider to a rural area is you actually are trained in a university, which is generally in a bigger area. You go do your other training, big hospital a lot of times. And so sometime during that time, most people end up getting married. And so your spouse is used to having conveniences right around the corner all the time. You come to some rural areas and that's a challenge. And in our experience, most of the people that have left Clinton Medical Clinic, it's not been a problem with the physician himself or herself, it's with the spouse not being happy. So it does take a special person to do primary care in the first place. Mm-hmm. Because primary care is at the low end of the totem pole when it comes to reimbursement. Mm-hmm. But it also takes a special, even more special person. You can say, one of my partners used to say we were doing missionary work because you're out on a mission in rural areas of not only North Carolina, but United States too.
Especially pre-Medicaid.
Yes. And so for a lot of different reasons. Mm-hmm. Someone like me, who grew up in a rural area is more apt to want to practice in a rural area. So that is one thing that some of the schools are starting to realize and try to identify people from communities like Clinton that want to pursue healthcare occupations and then train them and expose them to medicine away from the ivory tower. Mm-hmm. that is one of the things that a division of Community Care Physicians Networks called the Center for Primary Care and for Center for Independent Primary Care. I'm involved with that as well. And one of the things that we've been able to do, there's a lot of different things that this center is doing, or the people that are involved in the center are doing. One is being mentors to students, residents, and to young physicians to help them along. Just like I told you, I had mentors in Dr. Nance, Dr. Leak, and so forth. The other thing is we are being advocates for legislation. And I'm going to give some kudos to Senator Brent Jackson, a good friend, and our senator here, who I've worked with for the last 2 years, and getting some legislation and funding passed, which was done in the last legislative session, that will help promote and incentivize not only physicians, but allied health providers like nurse practitioners, PAs, to actually come to rural areas, including having some more support for teaching sites, like Clinton Medical has been a teaching site for years, and having more of those in areas like we have. And also in just general financial support. The average medical school debt now is $250,000. So that means that young doctor that comes out here, the average young doctor that comes to Clinton, North Carolina, owes $250,000 already. And like Dr. Smith and I both went to school on a scholarship from the state of North Carolina that paid us a certain amount of money to help us in medical school. And if we agreed to come back to a rural area, to any town under 10,000 and do primary care, we could work off our debt with service. So I got 4 years of a, quote, scholarship from the state of North Carolina to go to medical school. And I worked off my debt in 4 years here in North Carolina, so I was debt-free then.
That's a great incentive.
Absolutely. That program, Sundown, back in the 2007, 2008, when they had budget problems. And I thought it was a wonderful way to help incentivize some more people to do this. So, like I said, I worked with Senator Jackson for 2 years, and we were able to get, he was able to help get funding such that enough funding, I don't know exactly how many it'll be, but each student that agrees to it will get $25,000 per year of medical school funding during that 4 years, so $100,000. So about half of what the average debt is, if they agreed to do what I did. And 80 of the 100 counties in North Carolina qualify for these people to come out and practice. And there are some other, that's one of the main ones that I wanted to talk about, but there are some other programs that he helped get through that will also be loan payback and things like that for nurse practitioners, PAs, and allied health providers as well, in addition to support for teaching sites that are away from the universities and the medical schools.
Well, the environment, and you talk about teaching sites, the environment itself is part of the teaching environment, because you could be, as you just pointed out, you could be a great doctor and academically everything is, top of the list. But yet if you're not familiar with how to adapt to the area, you could also be a failure, I guess.
So if you're only exposed, studies have shown, if you're only exposed to what medical health care is in the universities and all, that's all you're less apt to go practice where you need it in a place like Clinton or something like that. If you learn, if part of your training is in a place like Clinton, in a site like Clinton Medical Clinic, you're a lot more apt to choose to go work in that environment. You see the satisfaction that you can get, and you really, I think that is a wonderful way to move our healthcare education to.
Do we find the position, when I say we, I'm talking about the geographical location of where we're located, i.e. Sampson County, between Raleigh and Wilmington, and proximity between, say, Fayetteville and Goldsboro, those urban hubs, that we have a little step that we could kind of encourage folks that this would be a good place because they can, be in Raleigh in reasonable time, or they can be in an urban area like that? We have
tried that the best we could in recruiting for a number of years.
Sounds good, but
yeah, and we're in reality, we're about 20 or 30 minutes too far from Raleigh, Wilmington, places like that, to be satisfactory for these young healthcare professionals.
If it was 30 minutes, it would probably be okay.
If we were in Clayton, instead of Clinton,
yeah, no brainer.
No, there's no issue. It'll be a lot easier to recruit people. But I think if you're teaching people in this area, they're going to be more apt to do that. And the Center for Independent Primary Care, that's a part of Community Care Physicians Network, is very active in the advocacy and development and implementation of these type programs. So I'm real pleased with that, and to be a part of that, because I am involved in that, in the sort of the strategic leadership of that group too.
One of the things that came up in some reading I was doing was that in again, today's world, whatever that means, I don't know, but in today's world, do we have the talent that's willing to focus in the details of, I can't even imagine going through medical school. Is the talent out there to do that, or is folks looking for something, should I say, more tantalizing or something? I say it seems like the world is ajar.
No, I think, there are challenges in healthcare. It may be more complex now than they were when I first got out, but no, there's plenty of talent. We have identified here in Clinton a number of folks when they were in high school that were talented, and some of them are in the process of becoming physicians as we speak. And we at Clinton Medical Clinic tried to help incentivize some of them to come back to Clinton financially and just with opportunities. And we have one that we're hopeful is going to be back in the next year or two. But there've been others that have, once they were off at the university and whatnot, they've chosen to go a different way.
I had a similar, touched on this with some years back. I had Dr. Watts on, and of course he graduated from Loma Linda, I think, in California, as I recall. And we touched on this a little bit. I think going forward, and we're coming to close, but I just want to let folks know the things we talked about need further deliberation, further commentary. So, I would like to ask you going forward if you may be willing to come back and continue this conversation about healthcare, because we haven't even got into holistic healthcare and those kinds of things. And we're coming up for closure in the show, and I'll give you about 10 minutes for last comment. 10 seconds for last comment.
Thank you for the opportunity. But you mentioned holistic care.
Yes.
That's a buzzword now.
Yes, it is.
I did holistic care the vast majority of the time I was practicing.
Well, we're always going to know you as a holistic doctor. So stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here, and stay tuned because Dr. Tommy Newton may come back. And as we close, may God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host J.W. Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.